Hello and welcome to my channel. In this video, I will be talking about The Hunger of the Gods, Book 2 in the Bloodsworn Saga by Gwynne. So I did get this book via NetGalley as an eArc, and I was really excited to. I talked in Discord too. A lot of people got theirs before I got approved, and I'm like, you guys approved me for the first one. Are you really not going to approve me for the second one? And they ended up approving me, so that was great because I was really excited to read this, and it did not disappoint, at least for me. So I'm gonna, since this video will be coming out before it's released, I obviously am not going to be doing any spoilers, so it's a little harder to do a spoiler-free review for book 2, but I'm gonna go in and kind of just talk about some more broad, vague type things. This book does pick up right where the first book, Shadow of the Gods, left off, and so we are kicking into action very, very quickly and just moving forward. This book also did do quite a bit more world building. Actually, like a surprising amount of world building for a second book, which I think worked out pretty well. There were times where I'm like, I feel like I'm getting a little bit of like a history lesson on like all the crazy creatures in the land, but part of what kind of made the first one just fun is all of these crazy things. And the reason we're seeing a lot more of them in this book also makes quite a lot of sense. We go to some different places. We have some different events happening, so we see that quite a lot. This is still quite action-packed and gritty. One of the things I actually really enjoyed about this, though, is you do get a lot of contrast, even within the same character, and how they are when they're like fighting. They're like these, cold-blooded killers, but then you'll see them interacting in different ways and kind of get to see the different sides. It's done really well, like I said, for like a character themselves, but also different groups of people as well. So being vague, but we in the first book are introduced to several of these like kind of like mercenary companies. And they're like, they're mercenary companies, but they're also just like, just like gangs, groups, whatever. But we, of course, have the Bloodsworn, whom the series is named after, and that group that are all tainted. We have the Battle Grim, which were pretty upfront as well, and a different group as well that were involved with traveling to, I'm going to pronounce everything wrong if I say specific, so I'm going to avoid it, but like Akastred or whatever. Traveling there, we have the Battle Grim, and we have the Raven Feeders, who are supposed to be kind of like the bad guys who are trying to overthrow the current system and free Leek Rifa, the dragon god. So those are all details from the first book. So like I said, no spoilers for book 2. But so we have these different groups. We're still following them. We're still getting POVs in the 3 different groups and just kind of seeing the way different characters interact. There are times where the characters in different groups almost feel quite similar, and normally that would be a negative, and I could see some people too, because like in the first book, a lot of the characters were kind of like cut from the same cloth, so to speak, because they were similar base types of people. This one, though, you see a lot more personality because we've already gotten to know them, we've gotten to see them, we know they're dangerous, but we've also learned a lot more about who they are as people. And that started in the first book, but we see that here. So instead of feeling like the characters are just like carbon copies or too similar, it ends up more so showing that, like, even though these are different people and they're on opposing sides, they can still both have similar qualities, and they can both have good qualities and aren't necessarily good or bad. And this book definitely, even like the quote-unquote like good guys versus bad guys, it's all definitely shades of gray, and it's the whole way that it's put forth is, for one, this is several different groups, and there are other characters involved too, and there's, politics and war and other nations, and there's lots of other things involved. But we're looking at these 3 different mercenary groups. They're going to have somewhat similar lives. And, we have the impetus for Orca, one of our main characters, is to find her son. But there's a lot of interweaving going on as well. This book also did a really good job of starting to interweave the plots from book 1, which for the most part, the different plots had not really fully interwoven. It was all kind of leading up. But even at the end, it had not really all connected yet because our plots were going in different ways. And I think Gwynne did a great job in Hunger of the Gods with making them weave together without making it too coincidency, if that makes sense. There were a couple of points where I'm like, that seems like a strong coincidence at times, but I don't feel like it was overdone. It wasn't just like things didn't just like work out, but there were kind of, we started to see how things wove together, or like maybe some characters knew some other people, things like that. So did a good job of starting to weave it together so that it's coming together. And with what this book sets up, I think that will definitely continue in the third book. And now that I say that, I don't know how many books this series is supposed to be. There's definitely going to be another one with the way this one ends, because I will warn you, Hunger of the Gods definitely ends on a cliffhanger, for sure, and it promises, I think, to be a very interesting start. There's a lot of things brewing. Like I said, there's a lot of action. We also learn more about the world and characters, but there's a lot brewing to bring it up for the next book. So it's definitely going to be one I will be excited to read and find out. And that's why I'm kind of always like kicking myself when I do. I did the first book as an eArc, and I did this one as an eArc, and now I just feel like I have to wait even longer. But it wasn't that big of a gap between Hunger of the Gods and Shadow of the Gods, the first one, because I haven't even been on NetGalley that long, so like it hasn't been that long. So I'm hoping it won't be a super long wait, but this has been a series I'm really enjoying. The thing I do want to mention, because I know with this series as well, maybe I should have said this sooner, but it's John Gwynne, so of course it's going to be compared to Faithful and the Fallen a lot. And if you've read the first book, you probably already know, but this does have an extremely different feel than Faithful and the Fallen. It absolutely does. It is more kind of like dark, gritty, and coarse, I think would be the word, because we're dealing with these different mercenary companies. It's a lot more shades of gray. It's a lot more just like out there with like different creatures and a lot of other stuff going on, as well as, of course, being Norse-based instead of Celtic. But in Faithful and the Fallen, it was a lot more black and white, good versus evil, and that was the point. It was more of that classic good versus evil, sword and sorcery type of fantasy. This has a lot of other elements and just an incredibly different feel. I think both are very good. Faithful and the Fallen is still a bit higher for me, which at the time when I read Shadow of the Gods, I'd only read the first two books, and so I'm like, I like this a little bit more. Then I read the last two books, Faithful and the Fallen, I'm like, never mind, I like that one more. Which that also is probably more my thing with the classic fantasy. I do think both of these books are very good. They flow well. There's a lot of action, but there's also a lot of heart as well. And the visuals too, like the way things are described, like the cover one, I'll put the cover back up, for both of them were great. And looking at and just the way things are described, the scale, the different creatures, like we're really seeing a lot of stuff here, and it's described well, and so it definitely brings the world to life. The one big thing, though, I will say that I do think counts as a complaint for this book. There's one part about the core premise, which I'm not going to be very specific, but I think you'll be able to figure it out. Very early on in this book, a decision is made in order for what they're going to do in order to try and fight and go against Ligrifa, the dragon god, who's resurrected at the end of the first book. And the decision they make, and I'm like, really? Like, you think that's the best thing to do? You don't think that's going to come to bite you later? I mean, And so that one... that particular decision, there was something else later on as well, but that particular decision, I'm just like, it makes sense for the story, but it just felt like it was a way too easy for them to decide that that's what they wanted to do. And so that was my one thing where I'm like, that seems like a little bit of a stretch. It didn't bother me that much, though, because it just, like I said, this was a very enjoyable book. We do get some resolution, too. The first book felt less like a cliffhanger because a lot of stuff happened right at the end, but we kind of had at least some resolution to where we're going. This one also has some resolution, but also some things that are like just beginning as well. So it's definitely a book that will make you want to read the next book, I think. And if you enjoyed the first book, I absolutely think you'll enjoy this as well. I think I rated the first book slightly higher than I rated this one. Granted, the first one I might have just been so excited at the time to read it, and I've had a lot more time to reflect now. But like I said, my really only big complaint was the one kind of problem I had with the core concept of a decision that was made, which I get why. And it didn't really bother me. I just, like I said, I couldn't let go of the fact that it seemed like a stretch. But otherwise, I think this is really solid. It's well written and very enjoyable, like the first book. So I really think if you like the first book, you're going to like this one. I'd be surprised if you did not. If you didn't like the first one, this one does move faster, but it feels like just a continuation of the first story. This is, I feel like, going to be one of those series that reads more like one book. Faithful in the Fall of Us like that too, where it really just kind of read like one gigantic book that we were just going, and that's kind of how this feels. We're probably not going to have big gaps anywhere. It's just kind of moving along with the story that's being told and going from there. With all of the world building, and I mentioned that as well, there were points where it felt like it was a little too much. And so I imagine, once again, that's something that I feel like didn't really bother me, but it might some people, just because it is, like I said, a little bit odd for this second book to be doing a lot of the world building, where we're specifically learning about some history, but also like different creatures, different lands. We're learning about a lot more. I feel like that's more so just because the first book, the story was really more focused on very specific things, and in this book things are more complicated, moving in different directions, and we're starting to expand more, which I also think is pretty natural. But I'll be interested to see what the third book adds to the world, or if it's just going to kind of run with what's been put there at this point. So that'll definitely be something I will be interested to see as well. So without talking spoilers, this isn't a particularly long review, but without talking spoilers, I don't know how much more I can say. Like I said, I really did enjoy this. I will definitely be continuing. I had the book pre-ordered before I read it, and I of course, am going to still keep it pre-ordered. The book is coming out on April 12th. It should be all major retailers that you can get. I don't have like an affiliate link anymore like I used to, so I can't send you that one. But check the book out. Pre-order it if you are excited like me, because John Gwynne is definitely just an author I enjoy. So he's definitely somebody I'll be pre-ordering all of these books and excited to read them. So check it out, April 12th, Hunger of the Gods by John Gwynne. And thanks to NetGalley for letting me read it early, because I'm really impatient and I did not want to wait until April 12th. So I was really glad I got to get to it early. Those are really my thoughts, though. Let me know in the comments if you are planning to read this, or if you're watching this after the fact, or if you also have an eArc. Let me know if you your thoughts as well, or if you have spoiler thoughts. You can always chat in Discord instead of here as well. But I'll be really curious to see what people think, and I'm excited to talk more about this book, especially once it's out and I can talk a little more freely. That should be a lot of fun. Make sure to give the video a like if you enjoyed it. Check the link in the description for the Wizardly Duo Discord if you want to chat this book, other books, really anything at all. It's a lot of fun and we would love to have you. And of course, if you enjoy my content, make sure to subscribe.